Good evening. That song, I had not looked at the schedule to know you were going to sing that. That's a hard song to sing. It was my dad's favorite song. And I remember he would sing it, and we were usually in congregations of 30 or 40 people, especially on Sunday nights. That was a big night. And he also believed that if you were to sing as loudly as you could. And he could not carry a tune to save his life. So he was a preacher, he would be on the front row singing as loudly as he could, whispering hope. And I could just hear that. And let me tell you, that was a much better rendition of it than what we used to hear. So glad that you're here tonight with us. And last week, I hated to be gone, but so thankful for Luis, who preached. I knew he would do a good job. I heard him in South Africa when we were there, and I was like, wow, he needs to share that with the whole congregation, and hopefully we'll have Luis again one of these days, because he has a message to share. We are starting a new series, as you've seen tonight, called Lessons from the County Fair. You may say after this, boy, David, you are really stretching it to do this. Well, maybe I am, but I want us to think about things maybe in a different way. One reason I do what I do, like on Sunday mornings, we had sermons on the mound that started with baseball stories. Part of that is when you are watching a game, I want you to be thinking biblical things. Whenever we had the series on country music songs, it was I want you to be thinking about Christian things when you're hearing secular ideas. And so tonight we talk about the county fair as an example. And so tonight we're talking about Joseph's roller coaster. And so Joseph's life was a roller coaster. Incidentally, I know some of you in here probably really enjoy them. I don't. I had a summer that I went on roller coasters. I went in 3 different parks, roller coasters in each, and I said, never again, that's enough. I've tried it. I've had the experience. I don't need it. At this point, I say, I am now to the age I could have a heart attack. I am never doing that again. No need to. I can watch you up there if you want to, and I'll be eating a corn dog and be really happy. But the life of Joseph was very much like a roller coaster. He is up and he's down, he's up and he's down. Matter of fact, they are even, if you were to see in some scholarly works about the life of Joseph, they would even call it the novella of Joseph, like the novel of Joseph. Because that's what his life is like. If you have never read Genesis chapters 37 through 50, listen to it, read it, however you put it into your head. It is powerful and strong, and I'm going to share some of it with you tonight. Part of the way it was up and he was down was Joseph was loved by his parents and he was hated by his brothers. Some of you may even know what this is like. You may have had this type of family relationship where you had parents who doted on you and thought you were special and important, or maybe just one parent was that way and the other one wasn't. Maybe you had a brother or a sister, or maybe all of your siblings couldn't stand you. You may know what Joseph felt like. Joseph's brothers wanted nothing to do with him. He was not from a small family. He had 11 brothers. There were a lot of people to not like him. And part of the reason they didn't like him was because he dreamed about the stars, but he would find himself in the mud. All the brothers, almost all of them were older, and they would go out and work, and Joseph is the young one. He is favored by his father. He lives in a time when a man could have more than one wife legally, and he was the child of his favorite wife. And so his father loves him and buys him a special coat. You may remember what it was like to get something special. When I was a kid growing up, for example, what I wanted more than anything was a Fonzie jacket. Do any of you remember Happy Days? And Fonzie had this leather jacket. Well, I had a pleather jacket, okay? It was not real leather. But I wanted a Fonzie jacket more than anything. Oh, I would put it on my Christmas list, my birthday list, everything. And then I got the pleather jacket and realized that's as close as we're going to get. So I went on to something else. Joseph gets this special robe from his father. And because he has that, everybody else hates him in the family. This is like getting the best pair of tennis shoes. He's got the latest edition of Nikes, and everybody else is, wearing Walmart specials. And so they're so frustrated with him. And Joseph says, hey, the weirdest thing happened the other night. I had a dream. He had a couple of dreams. The one that really got them upset was I had this dream that there I am and the sun, moon, and stars all bow down to me. Another time, the dream he had was that there were all these stalks out there of grain, and 11 of them bowed down to him. And he'd be like, I have 11 brothers, huh? Isn't that interesting? But now he's with the sun, moon, and stars, and his parents are like, you're trying to say we're going to bow down to you as well? Well, I just had the dream. I'm just, this is the way I would be. I'm just here to report. That's all. I'm not here to interpret. I'm just here to report that this is what the dream, which was probably from God, said. Oh, they're frustrated with him. And so here he is, and he's excited because he has dreamed about the stars, but he's going to find himself in the mud because he's going to be thrown into a cistern because they don't like him. What do? You throw your brother down into a well, into a cistern, in order to get rid of him. I remember my sister, who had 4 kids in 4 years, told a story about the youngest child they couldn't find, and finally found her in the guest bathroom with the door closed because the other kids got tired of her. Sometimes kids act that way, but this is more serious because it's not just in the bathroom that you can find the child. This is down in the cistern, down in a hole in the ground. He had imagined being royalty, but in reality, he was becoming a slave. He imagined this great thing of where all the powers of the world will bow down to me. But what his brothers did was they took him out of that hole. When they saw traders coming, people who would have been loosely related to them, and they sold him. Now, I want you to imagine what it's like to be down in the cistern, and it's, whether it has water, it's dry, whatever it is, it's muddy, it's gross and stinks. Maybe it has snakes coming out and in it and out of it. Who knows? What a horrible place it would be to be treated that way. Now they're going to sell him to the Ishmaelites. You realize this is human trafficking that's going on. And so they take Joseph and they sell him and send him away. Well, where's Joseph? Who cares where Joseph is? They take his robe, they dip it in blood from an animal, and they take it back to the father and say, wow, I wonder what happened here. Here's Joseph's robe, and it's all bloody. I wonder what happened. They never said, we sold our brother into slavery. In a sense, they did something even worse. They made their father think that his son was dead. What a horrific thing. Who would want brothers like that in the first place, right? So he's taken off to Egypt, far away. As the Bible says, he goes down into the cistern, then he goes down to Egypt. And now that he's down in Egypt, he is made a slave in the home of Potiphar. But he becomes the most honored of all the servants in the house of Potiphar. Potiphar must have been a wealthy man, probably some kind of government employee, a royalty of some type, and there Joseph gets to serve. It's not a good job to be a slave, but at least you're in a good place. It still didn't have air conditioning if you think about it. It's still a rough place to be, right? But Mrs. Potiphar decides that she likes Joseph. But Joseph has decided, I'm going to make the best of it. I don't know if any of your parents said this to you or teachers, but I used to hear this idea of when you were upset, stand up straight, chin up, put your lip back in, can't stick out your lip, right? Joseph decided, even though he is in a foreign land, away from everyone he knows, sold into slavery, I am going to make this work. He's a good slave, so to speak. He is a good servant. But Mrs. Potiphar, who has different ideas that she wants to have some type of relationship, and we'll leave it there, with Joseph. And Joseph says no way, and he runs away, and now she makes up a story that Joseph tried to attack her, and now he will be thrown into prison, falsely accused, and became a prisoner. He went down into the cistern, down into Egypt, and now he is down in the prison, which would have been in the basement of the house, or a basement near where their living quarters would have been. His life that had been so good all at once is so bad. Can you imagine what it would have been like for Joseph in prison at night as he would go to sleep and try to just rest and think about his life, and to remember what those dreams had been like when he thought big things were going to happen? Maybe you've been this way before. You had dreams of what your life would be like, but your life has not turned out that way. Joseph surely felt that. This is who I'm going to be, but instead it is not anything close to what he had imagined. Who, after all, who could have imagined that they would end up in slavery and then end up as a prisoner in Egypt? And then he was forgotten in the dungeon. You remember that there were, if you know the story, there were two men that were also there in the dungeon. The baker, and then there was a man also that was to taste the food for the king. And they talk to Joseph. They become his friends. They know that Joseph somehow has been blessed by God, and they know that somehow Joseph is a good man. But as soon as they got their freedom, they completely forgot about Joseph. Have you ever felt forgotten before? By those people who are on their way. Maybe someone became the manager, and when they became the manager, they knew that they would give you a raise, but they forgot you when they became the manager. They forgot you when they became the supervisor. Joseph surely feels this way as he is stuck in prison and unable to get out. He's better than this, but this is where he is. He's also, when he finally gets out of prison, whenever finally Pharaoh remembers him, or hears about him, and Pharaoh brings him out and he interprets dreams and tells them what they need to do to get ready for a famine, which incidentally there is archaeological proof of that, and tells them that they need to get ready for a famine, everything seems great. And he's up high again. But now his brothers, who are off in the home country, come to see him, not knowing who he is. He's been estranged from them for years, and now they come walking through the door, and they're wanting help. What would you do for the person or the persons that had sold you into slavery, and if he knows, had made your dad think you were dead? What would you do for a person like that? For brothers that continually made your life difficult, and now here they stand in front of you asking for food. What would your attitude be? It would be hard to be nice. As a matter of fact, he is not completely nice at first. He asks about his younger brother, tells him to go off and find him, to bring him back to them. But he is estranged from his family. But now things will start to change. When finally, there's more chapters here, but we'll go faster than the Bible does here for a few minutes. And finally, he reveals who he is to his brothers. You may say, well, why in the world would they not recognize him? Well, first of all, it has been years, decades. And second of all, they probably weren't expecting to see him. But the other is, he's dressed like an Egyptian. Obviously, he would have been wearing makeup, would have had his head shaved. He looks completely different than he looked back in the cistern. So he's been estranged from his brothers, but now he will save his family from famine. He will save his family, which is what we would say the remnant of Israel. It's Israel trying to kick off and get started. Abraham had been the father, so to speak, and then Isaac was his son. And then through that, now we get finally to the point of Joseph, and we're not very many generations away. And the nation is still tiny. It's a family. But now he will save this little remnant, and he'll say, you can come to Egypt and live here. And so this family came to Egypt and lived there, and he saved this remnant. So do Joseph's ups and downs look familiar to you? I don't mean literally thrown into a cistern. I don't mean literally thrown in prison. You might have been in prison. I don't mean that. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about your life. Do you know about ups and downs? Whenever it seemed like everything was so good, and then everything went like this. And then maybe it came back again. Maybe you get the job you dreamed of, and then it's not, then you get laid off. Maybe it's the marriage you dreamed of or the relationship with someone, and then it's not. And then maybe there's another, and then there's not. And your life goes up and down. So excited when the kids are born, and then the kids disappoint. And then they impress again. You go up and down. All those things we deal with, right, in life. All of us are there. If we're to list the things of our life out, if we were to write a book, we would all have a book that looked like a roller coaster if we were honest. Now, for some of us, our highs are really high and our lows are really low. But all of us would know what that was like because we've all been there. It's the life that we're living. So I was thinking for this lesson, what are the things that Joseph may have learned while he was there? Well, one of the things is it rains on everyone. You know what the Bible says in the New Testament? It rains on the just and the unjust. Everyone gets it. Whenever we have a rain in Houston, some of the people's houses it rains on are Christians and good people, and some of the people are not Christians and bad people, right? It rains on the just and the unjust. We all deal with it. When Harvey came our way several years ago, both good people and bad people had to deal with it. Good people and bad people get cancer. Good people and bad people get laid off from jobs. Good people and bad people struggle in marriage. Good people and bad people. It rains on the just and the unjust. Joseph is a good man, and it appears that it rained on him a lot. Another thing I think Joseph had to learn is don't give up on God. Don't give up. What a silly thing to do in Joseph whenever he's on the back of that camel going into Egypt. Don't you think that would have been an easy time to say, Lord, I guess this is all over. I thought you were real. Maybe you're not. Maybe you just don't listen. Maybe you don't care. Maybe you're evil. All kinds of things Joseph could have said. But what he learned in the end was don't give up on God, because God is faithful even though we don't understand. God's plans are usually different from mine. I think I've got it mapped out. And God says, that's a pretty little drawing you got there, David. What is it? And I could explain, well, this is the way my life's going to go. And he would just start laughing. What are you laughing at? Well, that's not close to what is about to happen to you. You see, God's plans are not my plans most of the time. Also, I think that he became probably sympathetic of complicated family relationships. He knew what that was like. Maybe if you have been in a difficult family relationship, your heart goes out to people who hurt in a similar way. When you have been through divorce, you have a place in your heart often for people who have been divorced. Or you have a place for people that have been unemployed, or whatever it is that you have dealt with. You know what that feels like, and then your heart goes out to them. Joseph would have understood now what it's like to live in a complicated family. And just to throw this in about the book of Genesis, which deals with lots of families from Adam and Eve and Abraham and Sarah and Joseph and Jacob and all the others that are there, someone pointed out to me, probably when I was in college or sometime later, that every single family in the book of Genesis is dysfunctional. Every single family. So if you are in a dysfunctional family, you look like you're in the Bible. So Joseph would have understood what complicated family relationships were like. And I think he probably would have also empathized with slaves and with prisoners, and would have wanted to do something to help slaves and prisoners. If you have found yourself as a prisoner or even as an ancestor of slaves, you may say, I've got to do something to help because you have been in that position. I think there are things in my life that make me very sympathetic toward various people and various groups because of the things I've gone through, just like with you. So this is my question. What am I learning on my roller coaster? I wish I could tell you from here on out, everything in your life is going to be good. But that would only be if you died tonight. What am I learning on this roller coaster? Am I learning that God is faithful? Am I learning to be empathetic with other people? Am I learning how to help people who are in need? Am I learning to help people who are on the same road I am or going up and down the same way I am? Am I learning any of those things? Because those may be the exact lessons that God wants you to learn so that you can help others. Don't waste this ride. Understand this may be your ride so that you can do great things to help those who are in need. Tonight, if you need prayer, you can come forward or you can write to us at prayer@mcoc.org. Or if you need to be baptized, if you're ready to be baptized into Christ, which will be the high of your life because you will be in Jesus, you can do that tonight as well. Come tonight as we stand and sing.